Saturday, 11th of May, 2024 at 12:34 p.m. in Shelton, Washington, United States on Harstein Island. Welcome once again to Trey's already showing off the thing, our cosmic journey. Casting our chart in the startup universe, designer Jake with engineer Trey. Trey threw me off with all of his camera movements. Hello, Trey.
Hello, Jake.
So you have been talking about the great unwinding. Part of your spirit is kind of decompressing right now.
Like you can't believe. Like you just can't believe.
You just can't believe it.
Wound so tight.
You don't seem like the type of person that is wound tight.
Unsprung.
I wouldn't say.
That's a joke for the viewer.
The viewer knows.
I'm a very tightly wound person.
Tightly wound person. I will say that one thing that has been very nice. It's been very like the location has been very welcoming to us. So yesterday, much like the rest of the world, we got to see the solar storm in the sky, otherwise known as the Northern Lights. At this point, you are seeing picture that we took because we couldn't stop taking pictures down by the water from our backyard. It's beautiful.
Yeah, incredible. Really cool.
It's a nice way to say hello, I think.
Yeah.
Astrologically speaking, is there anything around this that means anything?
I was thinking about that last night too, actually, because I know that there is like a lot of comet lore and that kind of thing, but I don't know. There's definitely like, I think like the Bifrosts or whatever, the Rainbow Bridge that takes you to the land of the gods in like Norse mythology is like theoretically maybe Northern Lights related. But I don't really know anything like, because in this particular case too, it's like it's because there was this like big solar storm thing, which I watched a video from Bill Nye about, like an interview on CNN. It was great. I love that guy, Bill Nye the Science Guy. He's wonderful.
He goes into big gratitude just like that. Bill Nye, thanks a lot for you being you. Today is all about that base layer. It is, like I said, the 11th of May. Oh, that is correct. I did it. Episode 34. It's going to be a relatively quick episode. It's going to follow the normal pattern of us doing way too long for an introduction, us doing too long for a checking question, us showing something off that is incomplete, and then us talking about our big feelings about that thing. So, normal stuff.
I guess that is kind of our pattern.
It feels like our Three's Company type of like, Jack Tripper is, said something and now Janet and Chrissy are, in a different, like, and Mr. Roper's involved. It's kind of like our thing. That's our thing,
Yeah.
I don't know where I'm going with all that. But of course,
I like it.
We start as always with the checking question, and then that means we throw it over to Mr. Trey Henry. Go ahead.
I couldn't come up with a really good one, so this one, but in typical Trey fashion, who knows where this goes? But now that we are back in the land of amazing Mexican food, corn or flour tortillas, and why?
Corn or flour tortillas, and why? The viewer might not know that Mexican food in Germany in general and in Berlin in particular is not great, and so we missed it. And we have we drove to this island, which required us to go on a ferry, the weirdest ferry ever, which is the Fauntleroy to Southport ferry. These are two towns that do not exist. We had no idea this, and while we were driving from Southport through Port Orchard to get this way, we found a taco truck and had a lovely time. And on that taco truck, they gave me flour tortillas. But sir, I wanted corn. And why do I want corn? A, I'm from the Midwest. B, I think that they look better and taste better. And I just find that flour tortillas is like, I don't know how flour tortillas are actually made. In my mind, what it is, you take some flour, just any flour, some water, any water, mix it up and just fry it. How basic is that? Now, corn tortillas are probably not much
it's a little
better.
more complicated than that.
No, it can't
and also,
be.
I was going to say that. I think corn tortillas are probably fairly similar.
Yeah. But at least corn tortillas seem, flour is just like, it would be like saying like, oh, I'm gonna like make a falafel mix like pita bread, and you're like, what are you doing with your life? Like, what are you doing actually? Like, you're gonna take falafel mix and make a pita bread? Like, what are you doing?
It's interesting that your primary sort of criteria for your decision making here is the complexity of making it, and not necessarily
no. I
the
think
flavor or texture.
I don't think. Well, that's very Saturn in the first house in Virgo, number one. We all know. Again, to our conceit for this whole show, Saturn in the first house in Virgo seems to be also one of the ongoing jokes of this thing. So yes, of course. Yes. Like, it seems like it's more effort to do corn tortillas, therefore I like it, of course. I don't know. You're just like corn tortillas. You get a feeling. Flour tortillas. You get a feeling. Yeah. Flour tortillas. And also, that like they do this thing on the airplane where they're serving 2 meals. By the way, privilege alert. Some of us take airplanes. I apologize if you haven't. It's a wonderful experience. And the way this works is they'll walk down the aisle. And especially if you're like further back or like mid-level, they don't want to run out of one meal. And so there's obviously a superior meal to another one. And the first thing that they do is they're like, oh, can I tempt you with the lasagna? And you're like, no. I'm not having that lasagna. No. Like this, like whatever garbage pea lasagna that you've made. No, I'm going to have the other thing. And so it feels like when you go to a Mexican restaurant, they're like, oh, flour tortillas. And I'm like, oh, no. Corn. And they're like, oh, you jerk.
All right. Okay. Fair enough.
That's how I feel about all of that. How about you? Your silly question is, of course, unraveled into. Remember the last time the viewer might remember the episode where you're like, what's your favorite key on the keyboard, which turned into a pretty heartfelt story about the backslash key. You could take a look at that episode up there. So again, we're back to the backslash key. What's your favorite key on the keyboard? Ridiculousness.
Yeah.
What about you?
I like seemingly no stakes questions that then suddenly turn into
that have me crying and talking about my pain from a childhood or whatever is happening here.
Yeah.
Flour corn for you.
Yeah, for me, unsurprisingly, it's flour. So for me, it really comes down to the texture and the resiliency.
You're
so for those that don't know,
you're looking for a dense.
Well, I'm looking for something that's malleable without falling apart. So
I see. So if we gave you if we made a rubber band edible, that would be perfect because you could be like yunk and then put it in your mouth.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because when I was a kid, I notoriously would like lose my mind if I like got a sandwich or something like that, and then the sandwich fell apart, or like the insides of the sandwich fell out, and so childhood trauma carried forward. Corn tortillas are the ones that are going to be most likely to tear and to you try to roll them up and then they just kind of like collapse or whatever. As soon as they get soggy, they just it just falls directly through. Whereas flour tortillas are like a little bit more resilient. You can kind of put a lot of stuff in there. You can roll them up and it maintains. And I do like the chewiness of a corn tortilla, but I prefer the sort of like smooth flatbread kind of thing of flour tortillas. So definitely I am in camp flour tortilla. Hey viewer, tell us what you think. Leave a comment below.
Smash that like button, like and subscribe. And why don't you tell us, corn or flour tortillas? It helps with engagement, which we care about all of a sudden. We have tortillas in this household. Those tortillas are what kind?
Flour.
And they're that kind because?
I bought them.
And if I would have bought corn tortillas, you would have lost your mind. We've already talked about this. You'd been like...
I would have lost my mind. I would have eaten them.
No, you would have eaten them. Let me be clear. It wouldn't be like a panic fit outwardly, but I could see it inside your face. Like you would just in here, you'd be like, he bought corn tortillas. It would be bad.
Who buys corn tortillas?
Who buys corn tortillas? Not me. Let's go to the demo before we lose the
lose the
plot here. Yeah, lose the thread.
Yeah.
I'm going to go to you, Sola. Why don't you talk a little bit let me go back here for a second. Why don't you talk a little bit about what this demo is all about?
Yeah. So we're gonna talk about the demo really quick, and then we're gonna talk about the fallout of the demo, and this will be the big feelings discussion about about the which is great, and actually we ended up in a really great place.
The viewer remembers this from the agenda earlier, but I like the callback.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So there was that last bullet item about what did we learn about ring cards. So I'm going to show the ring cards. Here we are looking at the firmament as we've shown before. So this is demonstrating components in a standalone format with the ability to create variants. And so, we've seen these cards before. We've shown this many times. These will probably get a little bit updated as well. But then, so these were the new ring cards based on the design, which I also have up here. So this was Jake's design on the ring cards. And you can see that we're showing just two of sort of like the primary variants here, one for a native birth, and
Birth native.
one where it's prominent and one where it's non-prominent. And then we also have just a what we call the here and now. So this is like the updating in real time chart or updating in real time transits.
Yeah, we showed that off in this episode. You can take a look up there.
Yeah, exactly. So so we have so we're showing what those look like as well. And this is all actually live. It's developed, like this is what it would look like in the product. However, I didn't quite get to the point of putting it on the chart page, which we will get to in a moment. So yeah, so that's it. That's the demo.
I love it. One thing to note about those cards, aside from the fact that we're going to go into like what we had learned from this cycle, is some of the spacing is like off and everything. And like, we say the same thing all the time. Like we just kind of implement this stuff and then you look at it and like, it doesn't look exactly right. And I think like the spacing is to spec, but the spec must be wrong. Anyways, it's just something that we need to fix.
Yeah, there was an interesting thing, which is that I'm back on my screen here. So
we can see it. We're there.
Okay, cool. So you can see that. So the way that componentization works in like UI systems is that we have there are some things which are similar here, right? So like you can see that the name title is same font, same size. In the prominent case we have the rod rating here, but in the other case we have the rod rating here, but it's actually the same rod rating. That thing is a component which we demoed, we showed before, and here it is in different sizes. So that's just being basically like plopped in there. And then you can see like date and location or date with no location. That's actually the same exact component as well. So the spacing between the date and location here is exactly the same as the spacing between the date and location here, because it's the same component. And it's also the exact same as the spacing between the date and location here, because again, it's the same component. And so once you get to sort of like this level of implementation, then we can start to tweak things once they're all componentized, and then everything will be in alignment.
Yeah.
Anyway, just wanted to talk about that quick.
Got it. So Trey gets to a point where he's implementing this thing and he's like, look, there's a problem, right? Like I feel like I'm duplicating code and I'm going through a lot of like pain to make sure that like all of these elements, and I'll show you my screen here in a second so I can go through this as opposed to just like talk through it, but all these elements seem to be mixing together in a way that's going to make me not be able to componentize my components. They're literally called components. They should be componentized. And instead I'm kind of duplicating code over and over and over. And what I said to him was like, okay, well, let's talk about it as best we can. And I think we came up with something that is actually, I didn't want to be the type of person, by the way, that was going to get excited about a process, but I guess this is who I am now. So like we have a bit of a process. Actually, now I just noticed something. Oh no, there it is. Okay. Sorry. We have this thing here that, spoiler alert. Let me go back here. It's this piece of paper, but I scanned it in. So this is that scanned in piece of paper.
Yeah, you can also bring up the
the data model thing.
Yeah, the data model, which is a big
Yeah,
one.
I don't
Yeah.
know. Anyways, this is the data model. Okay, so
Yeah.
what Trey and I were doing is the same thing that we do over and over and over. We're playing the game. What's wrong with the data model? Because we keep going through and like we keep either from a design perspective or from an implementation perspective, keep running into the same problems over and over, which is like there's this thing that's called a chart. The chart has many rings. The ring has one event. The event has zero
And
or
natives.
many natives. And like if it's a life event, it has to have a native. And you've seen all of these things, right? So like we were looking at a ring card that had an event that had, you know, a native showing up on it. And we're getting to this point of like, well, there's like all events and life events that have, you know, what I call normies, and life events that have promies, of like componentizing it down to the event, which is what the data model says we should do. Maybe we need to componentize it down to this. And Trey's like, no, that's crazy. Like, I'm still duplicating code. And we're going through and like, I, we've probably had this same discussion, I'm guessing 10 times now, of like, is the data model wrong? Do we need to revisit stuff? And you know, it's good to check your assumption on this thing, but at a certain point, you have to be like, we probably did something right. So I don't know what's wrong with us. Anyways, we go through this, and then finally we deconstruct this of thing of like the ring card is mostly an event, and it has this thing, and the event card is this, and finally we get to a point, and maybe if you know you were Sophia Prater of OUX fame, you would have already figured this out, but I'm not that smart, that I did not do a good job actually kind of bucketizing the component things. That things are kind of like mixing in, and like everything's kind of like a mixed up salad of sorts here. And instead, I need to be like, it's a, you know, like if you think about this as a plate of food, this is like you've dumped all of the food on one plate, as opposed to this one that's like, here is your steak, here are your potatoes. It's a separate, you know, it's a composed dish. And I was creating a UI that was not composed. And so, fine, great job with that. But I think the thing that Trey and I are very excited about, again, as someone who's getting excited by process now, is now we have this language that's called a set point. And it's this idea of like, once we've made a decision and once a set point can be revisited, but this is more of like, stop talking about it so much. You keep revisiting the same things over and over. And so now Trey and I have this language that says like, okay, we feel good about this. We've thought about this thoroughly. We've thought about this deeply. Can we please put a set point in? Like you put a pin in there. You're like, this is it. It is done. And I never had this language before, and I've been consulting at many companies in the past that had problems with their decision making process and their decision quality. And I really wish that I would have just brought this up of like, at a certain point you have to have a set point, like not, it's not time based, it's like you've had enough discussion about it, you've had quality discussions about it, it's got to be done, so you don't have to keep revisiting these things over and over. At least that's how I'm thinking about it. How are you thinking about the set point kind of idea?
Yeah, yeah, everything that you just said, and I think the other interesting thing about it is that it's actually a trust thing, and it's a trust in yourself. It's a trust in your prior self, because we have spent a ton of time like thinking through, like creating the model that we know is going to, or we you never know, but we have a very strong like opinion that we've created the structure that is going to allow us to build the software that we want to build, and we have thought through many different um, sort of edge cases and scenarios and all of this stuff, and that is all baked into the model, and the model is actually rather elegant for being something that's relatively complicated. And what keeps happening is that, like Jake said, we when we run into a friction point, regardless of where that friction is coming from, there is a tendency to sort of try to like open that box back up and say like, okay, maybe we messed something up here, like
Right.
maybe we missed something, or maybe we modeled it incorrectly or whatever, and then we end up spending a bunch of time kind of like going back over stuff which we already did, and it takes a lot, there's a lot of cognitive load to like unpack that box again and get like all of that back into your head so that you can think through it again. And as we were talking about this, I was like, every time we do this, we end up figuring out that the problem is not the model. The problem is some like new friction point. And that's exactly what happened here. Like there was an issue with the design, which wasn't super obvious, but that was creating friction in the implementation. And then it wasn't until we started like, yeah, thinking through it that we were able to get to that point. And so there's this kind of like trust yourself and trust that you did the right thing. You ended up at the right place. Like Jake said, put a pin in it and say like, okay, we have this set point that, unless
Until
there is
new
like
information
something
comes
really
in.
obvious.
Until new information comes in, this is correct for sure. And the new information might be like you implement it in the product and it doesn't feel right. Not like it's not modeled right, but like it's just wrong. Okay, fine, that's new information. You've now tested it with customers or you've looked at it in a product, but like we kept doing this thing. And I think this is a defense mechanism thing that can happen where it's like you get so wrapped up with making the exact right decision that you like keep doing this thing of like, did we do it right? Did we do it right? Did we do it right? And like you said, you have to trust your past self to say you did it right. You have to trust yourself at a certain point. If you had enough of a discussion, it's time to do that. The thing that I'm most excited about is when we have employees that work for the company, how we now instill this across the organization, especially when Trey and I can't be at every single meeting. And so somebody else did a set point and they figured it out all out. And you walk in and you have to walk in with trust that if you've done the set point, that requires a level of like rigor and thinking about this stuff that we say like, okay, you did a set point. I'm not going to go into great detail about it. Now, the other thing that's very excited about this is that when you do a set point, you have to do a video because you have to
I was just going to say, we should talk about the artifact of this.
Yeah, you have to talk to your future self. And I am going to show the video, even though I was shirtless. So here I am. So this is, you've seen you've seen this. This is the same piece of paper, right? Where I was just showing you right now. This is what I call quasi loom because this is like free loom here. And like, here's me for 4 minutes going through and talking through the set point.
Yeah.
Why it was a problem in the past is where I start. I'm not going to play this video. Where we ended up, and why, and like, what are the implications of this whole thing? So these things are wrong now, and now we have to do this kind of thing. Blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
And then of course I think I even went so far as to tell my future self like, don't. It's the same thing that Trey talks about when we talk about our ancestors of the past. Don't think your past self or your past ancestors were so stupid, right? Like they had a lot of stuff figured out. And it's like, hey, future Jake, past Jake had a lot figured out. So like, don't just like throw it away. So like literally talking to future Jake being like, this Jake right now, which is present Jake, which is will be past Jake, trust us, we got it. It's good now. So please stop talking about it.
Yeah. Like, yeah, having that be the sort of as soon as there's any kind of like issue or friction point, then it's like you immediately go back to like, oh, maybe we made some mistake in the fundamental foundation.
Yeah. And like I said,
and then from the technical.
Sorry, just say I've worked with many clients, and I almost said the client name that I worked with on this, and I shouldn't say it, but like big name companies have this problem, huge, and they have innovation problems now. They have speed problems, they have quality problems, all set from this idea of like you did not trust your prior self, or you do not trust other people to have your quality bar in mind.
Yeah. And then on the technical side, you were talking about the components, and the thing about thinking about how like the components work with the data model is that any individual component should really only care about the thing that is kind of like at its level. So if you imagine that like the natives details, so like the native's birth details, there is a component which represents that, and it should really only have to know about that level of stuff. Like it should really only have to know about the native and
Exactly.
whatever. And part of what was happening here is like we were having things where design elements of the component needed to know about something that was further down the stack, or that was like kind of like chained over, so that that intermixing of the ingredients on the plate that Jake was talking about was basically like things having to know about the details of other things that made it so that you couldn't, there was no what we call separation of concerns. So there was no way of encapsulating a particular thing and saying like the native only needs to care about the native details, the date and location only needs to care about the date and location, the event only needs to care about the event, etc. And yeah, and so that's really, I just kind of wanted to like hone that in.
Yeah,
From a description
exactly.
perspective. Yeah.
I'm going to make the offer to the viewer that we just came from a farmer's market and we got lots of greens, including like
So
rainbow
good.
chard and microgreens. So I want you to eat something green today. I know you want your tater tots. I know you want your burger. You need to have a salad with that. So can you make sure that you're also eating a salad today? It's a beautiful day. Have a salad. It's verdant out there. It's green. There's a reason why it's green. It wants you to eat green as well.
Yeah, I mean, even our dog eats salad. He goes out and eats the grass.
Yeah, and then pukes it all up. It's fantastic. We love it. Well, then have yourself a beautiful week. Have yourself a beautiful Saturday, or whatever day you watch this little episode. We love to see you here. Please give us a like. Why not? Write a comment. You know what? I'm shocked when people do it. So we love to see it. We love to hear from you. And we love you very much. Be well. Eat your greens. Take care. Bye.
Bye.